In the last video, we dug into the theology behind the methodology that only uses scripture in counseling. If you haven't watched that video, I really encourage you to jump back and examine with me, is this really biblical? Does it flesh out? Or is it possibly misrepresenting the power and goodness of God on earth? So today I want to be thoughtful about why there's so much pushback on psychology as a discipline as a whole in terms of integrating it with the Bible and using it in counseling. This opposition doesn't seem to exist in other fields. So one comment that I've come across a lot is this Christian argument against Freud in psychology and Freud in general, and bringing up Freud in this discussion. And he has been called the father of psychology, so maybe that's why he is brought up in these conversations so much, but it's really an unfair comparison for many reasons. First, Freud focused much of his work with very neurotic patients in mental health institutions. So a main problem with deriving these theories from this population is that it's not representative of humanity as a whole. So if you notice tendencies in a severe mental health population, you can't extrapolate those and apply those to the entire human population. And that's exactly what Freud did. Certainly not a sound research method. He made a very basic error, one of many, as most pioneers in fields do. To cite Freud as a reason to dismiss psychology as relevant is rationally the same as dismissing current medical treatment and care because the field began with practices such as bloodletting and lobotomies. Pioneers in a discipline are often wrong about much, but we are able from their meager beginnings to derive really effective evidence-based practices. In the medical field, bloodletting was a ridiculous practice if you think about it now, and it was used for treating most everything. It was, it was used for treating so many things that it didn't actually treat. But eventually, these practices were refined into an understanding of blood types and even blood transfusions, which are good current medical practices used today. So that's one argument that I hear a lot that I wanted to address. Setting Freud aside, when culture tends to validate and accept something, in conservative Christian circles, we are so wary about assimilating to culture and abandoning scripture that we often overcorrect and shun something that has some validity. I think our fear of assimilating to a culture that validates psychological methods has made us repulsed even by the idea that there may be truth in these things. But our God is a God of truth and healing. And I believe that he is so good that he is demonstrating who he is even in these secular disciplines. We may call Freud the father of psychology because he developed a pathway for studying the human mind. But in reality, isn't the father of psychology truthfully the one who created the human mind? It is true that we must love God and hate the world, but many of us have gotten this confused and have come to live under the shadow of hating everything in the world, or all the disciplines that the world has to offer that don't hold full truth like Scripture does. But God is existing in this world too, and he is existing in these disciplines. So it is part of the challenge of discernment that we are called to flesh out what in this world points to God and what in this world points to the enemy, not just directly, but indirectly. Psychology is certainly a field that at times has been used to distort the truth and shift people away from God. But if we throw out everything that Satan distorts for his purposes, we would have to throw out all of Scripture itself, because it was Scripture that Satan took to Jesus to tempt him in the desert. The subtle nature of our enemy is that he will mar what is good to keep us from healing and getting closer to God. And if the enemy is seeking to twist psychology and to create fear in the hearts of Christians about psychology, we must ask ourselves, what is the goodness that is in this discipline that he is trying to bury? And so those are some things that I think we need to hash out and think through more when we consider all of the pushback on psychology in terms of what is biblical and what does counseling look like in the church.